Uh, it was a bit amusing when Ashish asked me to write on this Dalit future, because I thought that even in future, and he extended it that you should not be confining to the short term, long term, and I mean short term, medium, even long term. That means it's back to something like we're imagining that Dalit and caste etc. should live over the longer term. You know? So thereafter there was a confusion gathered. As many people even, I think, hinted about sketching a future for many issues. The confusion was of that kind that do we extrapolate the present into the future? Then things would be quite dismal. Then I had to sort of write him back and ask him what is going on. No, so there was no confines of that kind. So you could feel free to imagine what kind of future would be for Dalits. So from that kind of thing, I somehow constructed a paper, and which is, I think, in that set. How do we see Dalits? Actually, I started off from that. And what is the present? What are the sort of notions around Dalits? All those kinds of things will need to be taken into account to imagine what kind of future that could be for Dalits. There is a lot of things, and I will not dwell upon that. That means whatever gone into the history of construction of this Dalit as such. But Ambedkar, for one, imagined the future in one very succinctly in terms of annihilation of caste, and even he gave a definition of something like an ideal society of his conception in terms of society based on liberty, equality, fraternity. So I took clue from that the minimalist kind of futuristic vision for Dalit would be something like annihilation of caste. Caste should go, and hence even Dalit should go. So these kinds of identities, now many people would dispute how could caste be disappearing, or how could caste be annihilated. Not from the other people, but the Dalit themselves actually do not believe that caste could be annihilated. So that's a paradoxical situation. And second thing is something like creating a utopia, nothing short of even the communism of Marx, that Ambedkar interpreted liberty, equality and fraternity in those kinds of terms. They are occurring something like all these kind of things in simultaneous terms. Not taking it from some French Revolution, but he said, I have taken it from Buddhism. Now you search around Buddhism, there will not find such kind of thing. It is anachronistic to imagine that such kind of terms would exist 2500 years ago. So this is the kind of thing. Now where are we present? Because we cannot jump on or sublimate into future just like that. We'll have to see the present. Now in terms of present, how does the Dalit situation can be seen? So we'll have to little bit go back and see how the changes that has come in caste system during, say, if not going into past very much, but from colonial times, there's a distinct changes that have come into the caste system. Marx, for one, had said, when railway network was coming into India, then he said that the factories would come around railway network, etc., the industry, and then all the decadent kinds of system that exist in India would collapse. And many people lament Marx was damn wrong. I find him quite correct. Okay, there are a lot of changes at least in terms of something like collapse of ritualistic caste had happened because of the onslaught of capitalism, because those kinds of relations cannot stand, and wherever they could stand, capitalism very nicely accommodated that, and it's going on. Major changes have come when the transfer of power took place. Our native people have been more vicious than actually the colonialists ever have been. that we never noted. There have been a lot of scheming right from making of the constitution itself, which has been very, very vicious. Okay, they very ceremoniously outlawed untouchability but preserved caste. Very skillfully preserved caste with an alibi that something like social justice was to be done to the lower caste. What is social justice? All these kinds of plethora of reservations, etc., that are available. That is what they wanted to give. Question is that did they give that, or did they not exist during colonial times? The reservation for scheduled caste as an exceptional people were instituted in colonial times itself, right from 37 onward. There was a preferment policy that the British had agreed, and which was actually made into something like a quota system when Ambedkar was member of a Viceroy Council in 1943. So, in recognizable terms, this kind of thing had come into being during colonial times itself. At least 4 years before the transfer of power had taken place, but no, they showed it as if they are doing it anew, and they created something like a parallel schedule for scheduled tribe, for whom to identify there were no actually concrete criteria. Alright, they were physically isolated, etc., but they could be accommodated within the same schedule, and the schedule could have been named anyway. The gain was that at least the stigma associated with the schedule of the scheduled caste could have been diluted. No, they did not want that. They again actually made it open-ended, saying that state would identify the classes are to be read as castes, which are educationally and socially backward. By that way, actually it made, now we can see that the Jat Andolan and everybody, there is no caste today that exists which does not want reservation. The reservation by these kinds of scheming was forged into something like a weapon to divide people in as many ways as could be possible. So this was the actually conspiracy. Same thing had happened. The supporting evidence could be seen even in terms of religion. The Indian constitution is projected as secular. It is not secular. When the subcommittee decided, actually Nehru commented upon that those people who were hampering upon secularism do not know what secularism means. We did know secularism. Secularism is a firewall between religion and the state, politics. So that kind of secularism we do not have. So these kinds of things, the religion and caste, were to be the biggest weapons in the hands of the ruling classes, which were very skillfully preserved. And all that we suffer today is because of that. Even a Hindutva could be traced to these kinds of things. So this is the game that played. And again, supplementary thing could be said in terms of the post kind of election system, the instrument that we adopted for our politics. It is a singularly unsuitable kind of system. But just with an alibi that we were the colony and by default something like a Westminster model was adopted. Not that all the colonies really adopted it in toto. They differed in many ways. And India, there was an opportunity for us to carve out something like a suitable PR system. In this APTP system, we call it a democracy, bigger democracy and all that thing. But theoretically, minimum 49% people would be excluded. So all that thing have been actually done during the formative days itself. Now I do not elaborate, this is just a preface. So this has an implication to the present caste that I would summarily say that contemporary caste having ritualistic aspects of caste having collapsed because of the onslaught of capitalist relations. Today's caste actually are the constitutional caste, they stem from constitution. So that is what it is. Because what happens is in terms of I can take a clue because caste could be spoken of in many ways, etc. But say that this precipitated or concentrated manifestation is in terms of the caste atrocities. For instance, how the caste atrocities, etc. happen if you look at them in a very something like precisely, then you will find that all these kinds of things are the making of something like cultural assertions of Dalits. And second thing is the power asymmetry that happens in the villages. This power asymmetry has lots of things to do with the political economic changes that have been brought in after post-independence India. So that can be actually, that's a matter of details, etc. But just I hinted it. Now, how does one define Dalit future? With this kind of background, then I started thinking of how do we sketch out Dalit future. So in a minimalist term, at least in terms of annihilating caste, we'll have to think of sort of eliminate outlawing caste itself. Now, many people would have a good feel that it sounds very funny because just outlying caste does not really, can such kind of system be really eliminated? For instance, the untouchability outlawed. That was theoretically impossible, but untouchability was just an aspect of caste. And caste remaining, untouchability probably cannot go. So, a plethora of surveys thereafter, just yesterday, something like NCAR brought out a report, and which actually confirmed that untouchability, etc., nothing really changed anything. But we'll have to see that in terms of Dalit future, now that these are lot many assumptions behind that there would be, and it is in the frame that in the liberal kinds of things, etc., it is something like doable. If we spread awareness and make people demand such kind of thing, probably it can be done. So how could the outlying caste can happen? Outlying caste can happen probably that you eliminate all these kinds of things, rectify your constitution, etc., and outlaw the caste also. The caste identities do not remain. I have sketched second thing. I say the institute true secularism. The secularism, because these are actually connected things. So that's why you have to bring in something like a secularism also. The kind of menace that this Hindutva and other religious kinds of things are creating and dividing people, probably India actually stands at the point where another set of partition, now not single partition, but there could be several partitions are in offering. Now question comes, if you actually eliminate the caste, etc., what happens to the reservations, etc. So this is a very sensitive thing. I have my personal opinion that reservations have not done any good to Dalits. According to my calculations, you know, that only 10% of people, and very intricate calculations like 60 onward, something like class B, class A kind of people, how many people have come up to that kind, how many people have come up to reservation to that thing, multiplied by average size of a family 5, that kind of calculation, you can model this thing and solve the problem, there is nothing, no big deal. And it comes to something, my answer was 9.87%. Okay, so let us take 10, 11, 12, 15 or whatever it is. But this is the kind of minuscule thing, and because reservation, the way it is designed, again actually keeps on benefiting the same people again and again. Now second, third generations has come and they do not have any meaning of that kind of thing. Okay, so those well-off people, etc. As a matter of fact, I will give just a clue. In IITs and IIMs, now having multiplied these institutions, the research seats are not getting filled for last 10 years. So that is a sufficient clue for what I am saying. Because this supply base is very small. It's a handful of people who could only produce people to get into IITs and IIMs, and that is just not happening. And in return, the entire mass of Dalits, 90% people who have been left behind in villages without any hope, actually have to bear the stigma. The entire thing, actually, caste atrocities, etc., are the results of that. So I would say that demolish reservation, but for suddenly for doing that thing, probably it may not be prudent. So we can freeze reservations. So all these people who are the beneficiaries today could be collected together in whatever you call as a schedule, etc., and extend the reservation, not based on caste, but on the base of family. That needs to be rectified. Based on family as a unit. If a family had availed of it, it would get dampened in this next opportunity. That kind of scheme can be
disqualification. So they get
out of it, and all those kinds of subcaste politics in among Dalits, etc., could be dampened. You know, like Mala-Madhiga syndrome, for instance, could be done away with. Because even when this Mala-Madhiga syndrome came in 95, that time again I was telling them that it is not a question of that kind of thing. Even in Mala, if you count them in terms of family, there would be only fewer families who benefited out of it. The majority would be left out. So this kind of schema can be operated up to certain time. Actually, reservation, entire thing, right from even Ambedkar conceived it, probably he did not have an elaborate, that kind of need to define it properly. But reservation could have been defined properly, and the things could have been an instrument to annihilate caste. Okay, but it has been used as if it is a perpetual kind of thing, and the same kind of dictum that Dalits are inferior people were reinforced by these reservations. So this is the folly. Political, next point I said about the abolish political reservations. So even Ambedkar realized, because it all started with political reservation, but then he realized what a mistake he has done, and he was not able to undo his own mistake even during writing the constitution. So it was somewhere arbitrarily limited to 10 years, and as we know that before expiry of 10 years, actually it automatically gets renewed without any Dalits asking for it. So it only was a machine to produce the stooges in Kashiram's language, for instance. Replace this FPTP, because I just preface, like FPTP is an integral part. This is a kind of ruling class mechanism. This is the only election system which...
First past the post.
Yeah, that's right. First past the post kind of election system is integral with all these kinds of division, and this only system which could ensure the perpetual rule of the ruling classes. PR system, etc., of whatever you take, because there could be anyway like, but it can be customized for our requirement. That is, there is a provision for that. But this kind of system only would perpetuate the single class rule, and this is what has been happening. Right? Then, of course, I come to the this nationalization of land, etc. Then the basic empowerment of people. Instead of reservation becomes a sort of, as I said, as a tool. But if you actually basically empower people in basic terms, like what is basic empowerment of people? Is health, basic health care, education, equal quality of education. If you do not discriminate children, etc., I would go beyond the health, education, etc. When a woman conceives a child, right from that, if she needs natal sort of care, etc., should be the responsibility of state, that when she actually bears a child, he should not inherit the disabilities of her parents. So if that kind of system is instituted, probably such kind of superficial things would not be required at all. So the neighborhood school system, etc., which was approximately envisaged in our directive principles too, but which actually were totally ignored. And then everything, even the directive principles also were mutilated. This right to education, all kinds of the recent legislation that they brought in are the scheming against the people is still continuing. And beauty of it is not even the advanced section of our society also notice it. In the intellectual and all this kind of commentary, it does not reflect any kind of understanding that this is what it is. Then this is the extension kind of thing. What kind of, there's a lot of things are spoken, and they should have an interconnection with other things also. That the decentralization of manufacturing and services, etc., something which Ilango spoke about. So those kind of things also could be touched upon here. And accountability of governance, etc. But I am actually forcing basically through discussion. If I get to a better clues, probably I am open to incorporate them. So I am none to really sketch out. I would say that actually Dalit do not exist in long term. But I do want to see that kind of future. But anyway, here I stop. Thank you.
As the unemployment crisis increases, I see the resolution issue becoming even sharper. Is that correct?
The conclusion that you want to see the caste annihilated future and not Dalits. I share that as desire, but I don't share as a realistic possibility. Because the overwhelming majority of upper caste, upper class, English knowing elite has given up the project of reimagining communities in a horizontal humanistic way. And this caste annihilation project, and non-believing Hindus have also given it up, whether they are in a Maoist party or in a Hindutva party. All those non-believing Hindus who started this project under the leadership of Gandhi have given it up. There is no Gandhi, there is no Gandhi's legacy of culturally, spiritually, morally preparing the upper caste and the Hindus for a caste annihilated future. And second point I want to make is, unless Dalits recognize this, that society as a whole has to reimagine the future which is caste annihilated in partnership with the Hindus primarily, but Muslims as they have caste system, and in other elements of the marginalized majorities, women, OBCs, it has to be a real universal partnership of both the exploited and the exploiter. And the other point is, in none of the liberative strivings I see the knowledge system of marginalized majority and relegitimizing it, incorporating it, the mainstream pedagogic systems in the education system is not there, and without that element, liberation I don't see. And last point I want to make is, there will not be partition, there will be pulverization of all the marginalized majorities and the rulers included in all streets and tolas and mohallas of this country, and partition is not possible.
That's what I said, a million partitions.
Maybe not here, because the 3 minutes is really so unfair. But in your paper, if you could tell us what if that had not happened, what you said, how the constitution solidified and perpetuated caste. So, along with doing a future scenario, if you could say that in your imagination, how it might have been if we had not done that. I'm fascinated with this possibility.
Not done?
Pass to.
That, you know, if the constitution had gone differently, how might, because this concern we all have, right? You're also facing it, what Vijay said. And it's not between Dalits and upper caste, but within the upper castes. How much caste is still, look at the matrimonial columns.
Yeah, I think wait.
I have two questions. One of them may apply more generally, but let us start with this particular sector. You know, in the earlier discussion, it was suggested that there are two options. One is to be independent of the state and get rid of your exploitation. The other one was you restructure or demand that the state fulfill a particular function. So in the case of caste, which one do you think is the appropriate?
Yeah.
And the second question, which is a more practical question, in terms of annihilation of caste, as you well know, many occupations are caste bound. So Dalits would be there as sewer workers, say, and deaths take place in sewers. So how does annihilation of caste operate there? Is it by them getting out of that work? Is it by making sewers safer? Or is it by doing away with sewers?
Yeah. Let's hold it. Yeah. Axel, yeah.
Well, one question, I know it's very broad, but I mean, in a country where such a vast part of the population profits from reservation by now, and where even large groups, perhaps in some places even majorities, want to be declared backwards just to get certain advantages, where do you see the political constituency for going against reservations in this long run? I mean, do you have a political scenario for that? And then the other question is, I mean, as a mainland European, I'm of course all in for proportional representation systems. But let me just express a warning. There is perhaps not so much in Europe, but for example in African countries where proportional representation systems operate, there's a strong ethnicization of these parties that emerge, and very frequently a very strong ethnicization of the political party systems, and which the proportional representation seems to advance, allow. And I mean, I could foresee castes operating like operating like ethnicity-based parties here in such a system. So that would be really, it may need another, thought.
Nepal has combined the two systems.
One second. Money.
Yeah, 2-3 points. Also, when you're talking about proportional representation, the 2011 census was also supposed to also define caste, and what came out of it is still extremely unclear. So it was supposed to show where which caste stands. Then this whole discussion of what you mentioned, the same people over generations are taking benefits, but within that also we see that there is a whole lot of demand of quota within quotas. So how are we looking at, because if we are saying a particular subcaste, because there are a lot of subcaste dynamics within the entire backward, it's not homogeneous at all. So when we are talking about this quota within quota, how are we envisioning caste annihilation in that context? Also, even if we are talking about reservations, creating opportunities and openings, I belong to higher education, we know what has happened to Rohit and numerous other people, but the whole point is that there are other forms of exclusion which still do exist despite reservation, whether it is employment. Sukhdev Tharat has brought it out. So I'm talking about when we are really talking about caste annihilation, and in Marathi we say zat zat nahi. So how are we envisioning all these things in this whole thing of assertion versus asymmetry, which still is very strongly entrenched in Indian society and would possibly be there more strongly polarized in the years to come?
So my question is that in terms of the presentation that has been made, it seems that the role of law has been instrumental in sort of fragmenting the movement in terms of reservations and atrocities, in terms of also understanding caste-based discrimination. So how do you see law playing a role in the process of anti-rating caste, and what kind of legal tools would you imagine that process involving?
You seem to be arguing that the ruling class made a conscious strategy of including reservation in the constitution, and therefore that's a mechanism of continue to divide the society on caste lines. And this was not a declared agenda, so it seems to be some kind of a conspiracy. So the serious social analysis have reservations for what we call a conspiratorial theory, conspiratorial understanding of history. Secondly, when you say there is an outlaw of caste, there is a section here where you argued for outlawing of caste. Now, you have just said that much. There are no other social measures, economic social measures, so which gives the impression that there is a juridical abolition of caste. The law is passed that caste are being abolished. No other measures are specified. No, there are the other measures that you have outlined. They do not specifically relate to abolition of caste. There are general democratic measures of pro-people policies. So, in absence of any other specific measures to reduce the inequality between lower and upper caste, just by passing a law, juridical measure, can we really expect that actually in social relations caste will go down? Third is that you have talked about revamped reservations. in which basically you have said that family should be the unit. No, not that. That doesn't mean that abolition of reservations. You are only saying that instead of X modality of reservation, there will be a Y modality of reservation. So, in a sense, I thought that this title is little, your overall earlier pronouncements are little misleading, because then you are not arguing for abolition of reservations. You are only saying instead of X kind of, there should be Y kind of reservation. That is the impression. Maybe I am wrong. If I am wrong, please correct me. Lastly, you have argued for abolition of political reservations, which was even Ambedkar had very strong reservations, absolutely correct. But at the same time, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar was also arguing for a separate electorate. Now, if there is no other mechanism for protecting the interest of the downcast, like he was arguing for a separate electorate. So, you are not arguing for separate electorate, you are not arguing for reservations, and then to entirely relying on overall democratization and progressive measures, whether it's a viable strategy from the Dalit perspective.
I just had a couple of comments. One is on your, what I remember from the reading of colonial history, what the British did was a divide and rule tactic. It wasn't a magnanimous move. I don't know, perhaps the others can correct me. It was an expeditious thing to give reservations. But the point I wanted to make was, you haven't mentioned at all the role of the Mandal Commission or the whole design of the SCP, Special Component Plan, which, I mean, the idea of that was actually to provide the kind of basic empowerment that it's gone horribly wrong, but that was the idea. And in a way, if you're arguing that, caste should be done away with, then you should actually be very much supporting rapid urbanization. Even though caste follows people who, Dalits who migrate to cities, it's still, the atrocities are much less, right? So, and it's the same point that Duno is making, that just because we don't say Dalit or we don't recognize it as caste, doesn't mean that segregation and ghettoization in the villages or manual scavenging and all would just disappear. So, you still have to handle that.
Yeah. One is that when we say the ritualistic caste is, I do agree that the future of Dalits is basically annihilation. That is, I think, the radical. But I think some of the distinguishing features of caste. Now, for example, if you say that the hierarchical relationship, you are born into a particular type of production relation. And I think that's what he used to say, that if you look at it in the modern type of thing, the whole fourth class employees or sewerage or other type of sanitary workers are 90-95% emanated from the Dalit. So this whole question of class and caste relationship, I think, which in a way comes through your paper to some extent, but maybe you didn't have time to elaborate. Or some of those things. Now, for example, another distinguishing feature of like roti beti vyavhar. Now, I think probably people are eating together. I think the whole question of marriages, and I think Ambedkar had this, one of the basis of caste to perpetuate is the whole endogamous type of marriage and things. And I think whether it is rural or urban, I think this doesn't seem to have changed much. That is what I think. The thing is that I think the futures, I think probably we also need to little separately about the Dalit futures in the rural areas. I am saying this because even Ambedkar himself has said that probably Dalits may not get justice in the rural areas, they need to move to the cities, concentrate their power and numbers, and only then they can resist. So there are some of these things I think probably we need to engage with. And on reservations, where the state sector is receding, there is also demand coming up saying that even in the private sector, there should be reservations. Now, for example, there was a big agitation in Hyderabad recently. So how do you respond to some of these things? Yeah. Last with Ellen.
In fact, all these 45 years, now I am 55, 45 years I have grown in the village as a Dalit, and I saw what is happening. And in reality, whatever the reservation, everything, it's a larger thing. The reservation is pointed for government jobs. And certainly a villager, just go to any village, a village Dalit and other communities, Dalit, he is not aspiring for any reservation or government job. The crisis in the villages is survival, is dignity, is slight empowerment, prosperity from hut to a small house. That level of thing comes, the later stage only, the moment he passes the +2 or then only he thinks about the reservation or trying to become something like that. The prime task is the empowerment of the community. For that, we have to accept. That's why I used to even argue to, there's a beautiful institution, Panchayat. Ambedkar had no faith in that. But Ambedkar's era was totally different. Now, even this 20 years of time in Tamil Nadu, out of 12,600 panchayats, I can say that 4,000 strong Dalit panchayat leaders have emerged. Though 2,000 are branded and beaten up and killed or something like this, and 100 or something, but 4,000 strong leadership have come. So use the democratic decentralized system. And in my own village, it's a casteist village, you come there, do any study, see the strength of Dalits. Like that, we have to make use of the democratic system, panchayat. And certainly in 5 to 10 years or even 20 years it is possible, which was not possible through the parliamentary system or through the state assemblies for the past 65 years.
Okay, certain things are pointers, but where I come from is the annihilation of caste. Actually, I started to face that such kind of change could only be brought about through revolution, but that would be chimera at present times, where the fundamental things are not taken care. So I am for that. So most of the things come from there. There are many things like I thought one would believe that much of the mischief has taken place that time only. Actually, caste, etc. is not something which could not have been overcome. 70 years, 60 years is a long time, and we could have done away with it. All these, I do not, some of the things, some of the stereotypes hang around, like intercaste marriages, etc. I have seen many, I belong to the class where such kind of things are very commonly done. But you will not find the social assimilation taking place with the intercaste marriage. It's a misnomer, Ambedkar wrong on many, many points. Okay? So, there should not be anything. Like reservation in private sector. I come from corporate sector. I know how the sector works, etc. And that is again a wrong thing to imagine reservation in private sector. Because there has to be structure. What is this? And its capacity. I had written a piece, in dispute with Thorat in Bangalore, which has come in mainstream. Probably you could read it leisure. So these are not practical ideas, and the other way around, they would all reinforce the caste only. Okay, the special component plan, whatever that has been happening around component plan, even the kind of allocation, all these is hoodwinking and some way preserving the caste and diverting people's attention from the real issues. The basic thing that was required to be done was the basic empowerment measures for the people. They are absent. Okay, the healthcare system in India, India actually spent less than 1% of the GDP on one of the most privatized health system exists in this poor country, and they do not have a shame in saying that because of the costly medical treatment, etc., it is certain percentages every year getting added to the poverty. So these things actually are confusing things. I would believe, for instance, if you integrate and create a stake of all the community-based and all. I'm not very sanguine about panchayat, as Ilongo says, and all that thing, but these could be measures. I have not seen, and I'm intending to see his experiment. But there would be some such kinds of things here and there, but it would be very difficult to scale it up as a model. I have my own reservations in that, but I'm not belittling the things. What I'm saying is, if the communitarian stakes would be created for all castes, something like the corporatization of the cultivation, land, etc., or village-based industries, etc., some way it touches upon his experiment too. The caste could be eliminated. He says that I know, I have lived in Tamil Nadu, and I know what kind of dynamics. I also come from village, so I am not averse to what is happening in villages. It is not ivory tower view. But But all these kinds of things can be taken care if such kind of stakes are created. How people start, actually how the caste consciousness surfaces, etc. as a mechanics. It doesn't just like that pervade. See, as regard matrimonial, 2-3 people spoke about that, matrimonial being in caste. See, caste may not go, caste, see, as an innocuous identity, probably it will linger on, but that does not, I don't bother about that. And if the people want to live or marry with their own kinds of hopes, what is the problem about that? But the caste with this stigma or kind of poisonous kind of prejudices, that need to go. Annihilation of caste would mean that, not that something like you sublimate to. There are such kind of identities, etc., which lingers on, but they are quite innocuous without any stigma associated. So that is not problematic. I think that I would think for again all of your points, but some of the points are very obvious, which actually contradict my viewpoint. So,
yes, you have a freedom.
But I would still rethink, because as I said that I aimed at benefiting from this discussion than more of my kind of things.
Thanks, Alan.